Great. Well, I will call the meeting to order. Peter Lindstrom, Chair of the Environment Committee. It's 4:06 on June 9th, 2020, and I will make an announcement right at the outset here that due to some technical issues, it's not practical to have remote monitoring today, but we will make this meeting available as soon as possible. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. And the first item is the approval of today's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Chair, before we do that, should we do roll call for attendance?
Please, let's do so.
Thank you very much. Fredson.
Here.
Sterner.
Here.
Bento.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Zarin.
Present.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Thank you.
You bet. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved. Vento.
Second, Sterner.
All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Roll call.
Roll call. Roll call. That's been a while, hasn't it? Let's do a roll call on that one.
Fredson.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Thank you.
And approval of the minutes from May 12th, 2020, regular meeting of the Environment Committee. Is there a motion?
Moves approval.
Zarin seconds.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Zarin.
Thank you. Roll call. Fredson.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Bento. Wolf.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Thank you.
That takes us to the consent agenda, where we have two items: City of Edina's 2040 comprehensive plan and sewer plan, as well as the City of St. Paul Parks 2040 comprehensive plan and comprehensive sewer plan. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Sterner.
Moves approval.
Sterner second.
Roll call.
Fredson.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. And that moves us on to our non-consent business agenda, where we have two items as well. First one is a unified budget amendment. Ms. Clancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. The request before you this afternoon is to amend the 2020 Unified Budget Authorized Capital Program by $20 million for environmental services. The proposed amendment increases the authorized capital program by moving $20 million from the capital improvement program into the authorized program. Specifically, $17 million will be moved from year 2023 and $3 million from year 2024 to the authorized program. The amendment does not change the anticipated environmental services current year expenditures and does not change the overall 6-year capital program, which is just under $1.4 billion for environmental services. However, this action will facilitate our ability to advance the bidding of a project planned at the Metro Wastewater Treatment Plant with the goal to start construction in early 2021. In order to submit a contract initiation memo, which is the first stage of our procurement process, funding for the project in total must be in the ACP. This project, which is associated with secondary treatment, will update aeration controls, replace the aeration pipe and diffuser grid, replace the aeration diffusers, and adds monitoring devices at the Metro plant. The work will improve environmental performance and energy efficiency. Aeration is one of the most energy-intensive processes at the plant, and we anticipate that the renewal of these aeration systems will result in savings of about $300,000 per year. So there are 16 tanks at the Metro plant, each of them with about 20,000 diffusers in each tank. The pipe and diffusers are about 20 years old and have reached the end of their service life. In addition, we are adding dissolved oxygen probes, which will improve automatic control of the facility. So in summary, Chair Lindstrom and committee members, it is recommended that the Metropolitan Council amend the 2020 Unified Budget Authorized Capital Program by $20 million as indicated and in accordance with the Unified Capital Program Environmental Services Table 10 and Capital Program Table Attachment 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on that presentation? Let's see, your grid, my grid here just disappeared on me, so I can't see if you're waving your hands, but any questions out there?
Wolf moves approval.
Motion's made.
Fred's in second.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Okay. Fredson,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zarin,
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye. Thank you. Very important project. And it's going to be great to see that completed, obviously extremely necessary, and to get 300,000 worth of savings from our energy is it's a great deal. So that takes us to our second item on our non-consent agenda, which is the Blue Lake Solids Management Assistance Contract. Who will be presenting on this? Mr. Peterson or Ms. Heflin?
Ms. Heflin will start.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Environment Committee. Can you hear me?
We
This
can.
is Renee. Thank you. This is Renee Heflin. I am manager of the Plant Engineering Technical Services, and I am here to introduce Jason Peterson, who will present the business item 2020-169 Blue Lake Solids Management Assistance Contract 19P211. Jason is a principal engineer in the plant engineering group. He has been with the council 18 years. Jason has history of project engineering experience at the Blue Lake Wastewater Treatment Plant. He was a project engineer during the construction of biological phosphorus removal and other improvements at the plant. He is the project manager for the Blue Lake Bar Screen and Odor Control Improvements Project, which is currently under construction. Jason is the facility engineer for Blue Lake, providing ongoing technical support for operations and maintenance, and he is currently helping to plan the next renewal and improvements program for the plant. Jason has coordinated the development and procurement of the proposed contract before you this afternoon for Blue Lake Solids Management Assistance. I want to mention just one other thing before turning it over to Jason. Jason, myself, and our Technical Services Assistant General Manager, Janine Clancy, will be available after the presentation to answer your questions concerning this business item. Here's Jason Peterson. Next slide, please.
Hello, Chair Lindstrom and the Environment Committee members. It's a pleasure to be a part of your meeting today. The Blue Lake Wastewater Treatment Plant, shown here, treats wastewater from the Southwest metro area. Wastewater solids are treated in the final stabilization facility, which we call FSF, and is shown here in yellow. FSF was designed and built through a public-private partnership back in 1999 and has been operated for the last 20 years under that same partnership with the New England Fertilizer Company, which we call NEFCO. For 20 years, FSF has converted wastewater solids into a marketable fertilizer pellet, and 100% of the product in that time frame has found sustainable end use. That is something we are very proud of at the plant. The contract for this pelletization and end use management expires December 31st of this year. I'm here today to request approval for a new contract that will continue on-site solids operation and sustainable end use management for the next 10 to 20 years. Next slide, please. There are some key points from the solids management assistance contract I would like to share. First, the Blue Lake operations delivers dewatered wastewater solids to FSF on a conveyor. The contractor is responsible to process and sustainably use all solids delivered to FSF. The contractor is responsible to manage all operations and maintenance activities associated with drying, storage, and transport, these equipment and processes, as well as end-use marketing. All operations and most of the maintenance activities are performed by MCS staff. This structure is the same as the original contract. For the contractor to receive full payment, they must provide documentation that the product was sustainably used. And finally, this contract has a 10-year initial term with provisions for 2 5-year extensions if agreed upon by both parties. Next slide, please. The new contract was advertised with a request for proposals on January 22nd, 2020. The Office of Equal Opportunity reviewed this contract and determined there was no opportunity for subcontracting. There were 7 plan holders, and each potential proposer was invited to 2 site visits. On April 16th, 2 proposals were received, one from NEFCO and one from Synagro. Next slide, please. The proposals were evaluated by a panel of 6 environmental service employees and 2 external stakeholders. The evaluation criteria included quality of the proposal, qualifications and experience of the proposer, and price. The panel determined that both proposers demonstrated the ability to do a great job for the council. NEFCO was selected due to more experience with software that interfaces with council software, more experience using public employees, and they had a lower proposed price. Next slide, please. The total 10-year cost is $23.5 million. Year 1 will be $2,096,000. Pardon me, $2,096,000. And each year will increase based upon the consumer price index. For comparison, I want to point out that the scope is the same under the expiring contract and the proposed contract, but the price will reflect a significant savings to the council over the existing contract. We attribute this to reduced risk after 20 years of successful operation, updated contract language, and a competitive environment for the proposal. Next slide, please. The recommended action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize award and execution of contract 19P211 with the New England Fertilizer Company in the amount of $23.5 million for the Blue Lake Solids Management Assistance. Next slide. Thank you for your time, Chair Lindstrom and members of the committee. Renee and Janine and I can answer any questions you may have, or you may email us later if you think of them.
Excellent. Thank you for that presentation. Any questions for Jason? Any questions for Jason or Renee or Janine or anybody? It's a very impressive operation. I've had the chance, many of us, perhaps all of us have had a chance to tour it and seeing the process that they undergo. And it's not a small operation by any means. And it's good to know that everything that's being sent there is has a good end use. Councilmember Zirin.
Yes, Chair Lindstrom. The presentation went a little fast, and I missed the numbers. Could we ask presenter Jason to? I don't know who's in control of the slides. Can we go look? I would like to, oh, I'd like to go back to that slide there, if you don't mind. Okay. I'd like to take notes, and I wasn't able to capture that as we went along. I think this is sounds good, and I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I move approval yet? This is Wolf.
Please do so.
I just did.
Duly noted. Is there a second?
No seconds.
All right, please take the roll.
Fredson,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zarin,
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye. Thank you very much. And that takes us to our information item, where we are going to be getting an update on IPIP, Industrial Pretreatment Incentive Program.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ned Smith, and I am the Director of ES Finance and Revenue. And I am joined today by Deborah Manning, who is an Assistant Manager in our Plant Engineering and Technical Services. We're going to provide an update on the progress of the Industrial Pretreatment Incentive Program, often called IPIP, both in terms of our 2 existing contracts that are up and running, as well as some potential for additional applicants to complete their cycle, and then next steps for the program. With that, next slide, please. So just as a reminder, the purpose of IPIP was to provide a financial incentive to assist high-strength industrial wastewater dischargers to put additional pretreatment facilities at their site to reduce the amount or eliminate the amount of strength that is coming from their facility through our pipes and into our plants. That should reduce our treatment costs, both through processing as well as energy. And then, the biggest advantage of it is it would delay or reduce our expansion of wastewater treatment plants in the future. For most of our plants, our biggest capacity issue is not actually in the liquids. We have plenty of liquid capacity. Our bottleneck is our solids. And so if we can reduce the amount of solids that come into a plant, we can significantly delay the expansion needed for that solids treatment. So we want to tell you kind of how we're doing and then what's the future. Next slide, please. Just again, for more background, it does align with our council mission and our Thrive outcomes. First and foremost is for the orderly economic growth of the region. IPIP is a great way we can help industries grow and continue to expand their capacity. From a prosperity perspective, helps to create regional jobs. One of our IPIP customers could not add a 3rd shift to their production because they couldn't get enough water. And by putting in the IPIP facility, they're able to recycle water and enough to the extent that they can add that 3rd shift without purchasing any more water or drilling any more water from a well. From a stewardship perspective, we are using the financial resources of MTS and the ratepayers to help out and to use it wisely. And by that, we mean one of the tenets of the program is that they are using MCES debt, not their own debt. And because of our financial situation and our high reserves and our customers' ability to always pay their bills, we have very cheap debt. And we're using that to help our industrial partners and help us. And then it reduces our energy use in facilities. And this is 2 ways. One, it reduces the initial energy used for the treatment because this reduces the amount that we need to take the waste out of the liquids, both in primary and secondary. But then also it gives us an additional energy generation capability since several, one for certain and another is we're evaluating, they bring the solids and put them directly into the digester. So that generates additional gas that we can use for, or we will use for energy generation. And as I spoke earlier, it defers our capital investment since we can reduce or delay our expansion at MCS, wastewater treatment plants. Next slide, please. And that, of course, it aligns with our 2040 Water Resources Policy Plan, where we specifically put in that we want to make sure we're providing industries with an incentive to pre-treat our wastewater in order to reduce strength and make the most environmental and economic benefit for the region. I am going to close my email so it stops beeping. Next slide, please. So just again, a little brief background on what is high-strength wastewater charge. Any industrial customer that has a process on site pays it through two ways. First is their municipal wastewater charge, and that is the cost to treat their average domestic waste strength. So that is just what goes through the pipes and what is billed to them by the city based on their volumes. And then we have our high-strength waste charge, which is billed directly by MCES. And this is acknowledging that the waste that they send us is a stronger waste than what typically comes from a domestic source. And so therefore it's more expensive for us to treat it. And so we charge an additional treatment cost. And it's based on their chemical oxygen demand as well as total suspended solids. We actually figure out what the cost is per pound for treatment across the entire system. And we use that as the basis for our strength charges. Our range of high-strength wastewater charges, we have customers that are only $100 a year to customers that are over $1 million a year in their strength charge. And also just for context, our total industrial waste strength charge and permitting fees are around $15 million a year. So it's about 5% of our revenue. Next slide, please. So the basic steps, first we make a loan to the qualified industry. So, and we do that at the council's interest rate. So we go out and issue IPIP specific debt. Because it's being used by a private industry, we cannot get tax exempt bonds for that. So they are taxable bonds, taxable municipal bonds, but we're still able to leverage our AAA rating, which at the time we did the bonds for this issue was around 3 to 3.5%. We issue a 10-year bond. And then we reimburse the industry as they build the pretreatment site. We have our technical services folks do the inspection. Deborah will talk a little bit more about that. That's the key part that Deborah brought to the project. And then as they do that pretreatment, it reduces their high strength charge MCES. Once it's built, then MCES and the council owns the equipment and we lease it back to the industrial customer over a 10-year period. The industry itself operates and maintains it. And then after a 10-year term, the industry will own that equipment. While they're making those lease payments in those 10 years, they can qualify for discounts on those lease payments up to 30% based on performance against their high strength reduction goals. So as part of the contract negotiation, we negotiate with the customers what strength reduction we would like to see, and it's on a gradated scale. And so if they meet 100% of their goal, then they get 30% of their discount. If they meet less than that, then they'll get less of the discount. So it is gradated, it's not an all or nothing. Next slide, please. So a brief overview of the history. It's been a long road, but it's been one that I'm glad we're pursuing. So we started back in November 18th of 2014, where we put this out for public hearing. On January 14th of 2015, the Council and Environment Committee authorized the program. We sent out requests for proposals to industries. So this is basically where they could apply. They did have to pay a $5,000 application fee to apply. We went out and had proposer meetings where we went out and shared the details with our customers and did a kind of a public relations blast to get as many people aware as possible. And generally we targeted our most significant customers, but certainly put it out there for any industrial customer that was interested. And then in May of 2015, we got 5 applications that we approved. Kemp's, which does dairy, Northern Star, which does potatoes. Twin Cities Tanning and Twin Cities Hide are leather tanneries. They supply mostly Red Wing shoes. And then Old Dutch, which of course is potatoes. On November 28th, the Council and Northern Star signed an agreement for $11.3 million. And on May 23rd of 2018, the Council and Kemp's signed an agreement for $905 million. And around that time, around May of 2018 was also when we issued the bond for those two programs together for $12.2 million. Next slide, please. So I have walked through kind of how this got created. Once it was created, Technical Services stepped in and took over a crucial role of program management. And I'm grateful for their work and help. And so Deborah Manning has been the program manager for this, and I'll turn it over to her to walk through the current status with our two customers. Deborah?
Thank you, Ned. Good afternoon, Chair Lindstrom and council members. I want to talk about the two IPIP contracts that we currently have moving through construction and into startup, and actually through startup, one of them. The first one I want to talk about is Northern Star, which is a unit of Michael Foods. Northern Star is a potato processor in the Blue Lake Wastewater Treatment Plant service area. And as Ned mentioned, in November of 2017, the Council and Northern Star executed the IPIP contract for $11,297,185. The loan status as of mid-March, the council has loaned $8,394,181 to Northern Star for the construction of their pretreatment, additional pretreatment facilities, the IPIP equipment. As of May, that number has increased to 93% of the loan status. Northern Star has paid back $2.7 million of that loan as of mid-March. Startup is anticipated in June right now. Northern Star is starting to put water through their IPIP-related equipment. The reductions in the strength of the waste that comes to the Blue Lake plant are shown in the table on the bottom of the slide. The parameters of interest are total suspended solids, chemical oxygen demand, phosphorus, and nitrogen. We anticipate about between 55% reduction to 90% reduction in loads of those parameters. That reduction has an impact, or would have an impact on the Blue Lake treatment plant. There would be less solids produced, and as Ned indicated, when less solids are produced, it can help us defer capital projects to expand solids capacity. We also anticipate that we would use less energy for treatment. Next slide, please. Kemp's Foods makes dairy products in the Empire Wastewater Treatment Plant service area. In May of 2018, the council and Kemp's executed an IPIP contract for $905,000. That money was used by Kemp's to install a reverse osmosis treatment process. As of mid-March, 100% of that money was loaned to Kemp's, and they have completed their construction, and the IPIP equipment has been running for about a year and a quarter. In terms of debt service payments, Kemp's has paid back $145,048.72. because they have reduced their waste going to the head of the Empire plant by 96% in terms of its strength, they have received the 30% debt service reduction. As I mentioned, they completed their construction in December of 2018, and we have been working together to monitor the progress and the impacts on the Empire plant, and the impacts that we're seeing are consistent with what we had anticipated. I want to mention that besides the reduction in the strength going to the head of the plant, there is another aspect to Kemp's IPIP project. They have a high strength waste from their waste processing equipment, and we are taking that high strength waste directly to our digesters. And taking that waste there will increase the digester biogas production by an estimated 23%. And we will be able to use that biogas to generate energy, about 3,700 million British thermal units per year. That is equivalent to reducing the greenhouse gas production of 172 cars per year. I want to mention the quote in the bottom right-hand side of the slide. It's from Mr. David Seefelt, who is the plant manager at Kemp's. And he noted that the plant had been working to get approval to install this reverse osmosis system since about 2012. They hadn't gotten corporate approval, but when the IPIP program was announced and they were able to qualify, we're finally able to get corporate approval to install this equipment, and they have felt that it has proven to be a win-win for both parties. Next slide, please. This is a graph showing the historical strength charge for Kemp's from 2012 to 2019. There can be a fair bit of variability in strength charges. We sample the industry's industrial waste discharge once a quarter, and there are many things that can influence the sample and the results. So this shows some variability in Kemp's strength charge. What I want to point out is from the period from 2018 through 2019, the last two dots there on the chart, the reduction in the strength charge linked to the IPIP equipment, and that's about $170,000 reduction in strength charge. So that is wastewater strength that is no longer coming to the head of the plant, and therefore charges that are no longer being charged to Kemp's. With that, I conclude my portion of the presentation, and I will turn it back over to Ned. Next slide, please.
This goes better if I'm unmuted. Thank you, Deborah. I also want to thank so many of the cross-functional members of the team, the project management team that stepped up to help out. Jim Saylor from Technical Services helped so much with the review of the invoices. I also want to thank Bob Nordquist and the permit engineers for each one of those industries. In industrial waste, they've been great partners to get this up and running. We kept saying all along we were building an airplane while we were in the air, and it certainly felt like that sometimes, but Deborah and the team really brought some discipline to the process that made it feel less chaotic. We do have three other industries that have applied. Initially, all three went through some changes, corporate changes, and some other financial adjustments so that all three of them initially backed off after they did their application. However, there has been some renewed interest, and I just want to give an update on that. So Twin City Tanning and Twin City Hide, again, they process hides for leather products. They are served by the Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Plant. And we had a meeting in February to start moving ahead. That was before COVID happened. We have engaged a third party to do the financial due diligence. We do that to make sure that the companies are sound financially and fiscally and can meet their obligations. And we use a third party to make sure there's no conflicts of data availability. And so that way the companies can remain privately protected, but we can still get an assurance that they will meet their fiscal obligations. Twin City Tanning is reassessing their financial situation right now based on the pandemic. Twin City Hide was particularly interested because they were building a new plant and thought that would be a good time to put in a new piece. That work is continuing, so they are continuing to evaluate their options. Both are continuing to evaluate their options, but I believe we'll see Twin City Hide, we'll see progress there before first. Old Dutch Foods also has signaled some renewed interest, and we are continuing to work with them to see what some next steps are there. Next slide, please. So next steps for the program altogether. In general, we still consider this to be a pilot. We wanted to get some customers up and running to see were the costs and the benefits truly what we expected them to be? Have they met our objectives? One of the concerns we have is there's a lot more, as I mentioned earlier, all of the outstanding cross-functional engagement that comes at a program administrative cost. And so we need to think about that too in terms of overall cost benefits. If it looks like it's positive, then we would come back to the council and we would ask for a second round of proposals. When we do that second round, a lot of the things that we'll think about is not just the strength, but maybe the nature of the strength. Looking at the chloride and total dissolved solids, looking at soluble non-reactive phosphorus and its impacts on our system, as well as fats, oils, and greases and its impact on our system, especially in our interceptors. And we'll think about how could IPIP reduce those programs. So we might do a more targeted approach of course, we would welcome all applicants, but we might specifically reach out to some folks where we think it would have a bigger impact on our overall system health. And obviously, if the cost and benefit is not positive, then we would not pursue a second round of proposals, but we would continue to honor our current proposals and contracts, including the 3 that haven't executed yet. We would, of course, let them we proceed with execution with them. But so we, again, we're keeping an open mind. I think, we still need to get Northern Star up and running. So we'll need a year, perhaps, to review the results there before it's all settled in and dialed in, and we can really understand the impact. So overall, I think it would be at least a year before we are ready to come back with a next set of recommendations. Next slide, please. And with that, Deborah and I will stand for any questions.
Fantastic presentation, both of you. Thank you very much. I see Council Member Vento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ned or Deborah, I'm curious. I'm not sure quite how to ask this question, so I'll stumble through it and hopefully it'll make sense. But what's the life of the investment beyond the 10-year lease, whether it be technologies or equipment? How long does that value for either the council or for the industry last?
Mr. Chair and members of the council committee, I will start with the financial value, and then I'll ask Deborah to hazard a guess how long the corncob stew will last. The financial for us, we're done at 10 years. So all value of that lease will have been written off of our books, as well as all of our debts will have been repaid. So that's the other reason we had to do a separate bond issue here. When we do council wastewater bonds, we typically do 20 years, but these were going to be 10-year agreements. So we did 10-year bonds. And just what's interesting about this is when those bond bills come in, we send that invoice directly on to the customers. And they are the ones that are actually paying it's the debt service. The interest payment is due in September, and then the principal and interest is due in March. And so it's spread out over 10 years. So after those 10 years, there will be no value for us. But Deborah, I'll ask you to make some estimates about reverse osmosis and corn cob cheese.
Sure. Thank you, council members, Chair Lindstrom and council members. Thank you for that question. It's a very interesting question. Industries take a different timeline for equipment value and that sort of thing. So, but this sort of equipment certainly should have an expected life of 20 years. And so they should see the benefit from that equipment for at least that long. I think it's important, though, to also point out, as was mentioned, for industries, they likely have other benefits. For Northern Star, they anticipated having difficulty getting a water appropriation in order to get water to expand. And so that is a very difficult number to value, but I'm sure it was part of their evaluation, but we wouldn't have really any information about that. But there are kind of additional benefits that weren't calculated right into the IPIP analysis directly.
And Deborah, if I could, one other point I forgot to emphasize in the background. When we get the contract, we look at the cost benefit for the industrial waste customer, and we look at the cost benefit for the council. And we have to do better than the industrial waste customer. That way the region, so that the financial benefits, the net present value of the agreement has to be higher for the council than it is for the end user customer. So that way we make sure that it's better in the long run of the interest of the region. Thank you.
And at the end of the day, like the quote said from the individual at, I forget if it was Kemp's or Michael's Foods, but it has to be or it can be a win-win situation. Hopefully the net present value is above 1 for both entities. So that's great. And I think that ancillary value of Northern Star adding that third shift, that's a great story to tell. And it'd be, as we progress on this pilot, thinking about how to communicate that to the region, that this is a win-win pilot program. I would definitely encourage staff to connect to our communications folks and help tell that story. Council Member Zirin.
Thank you, Chair Lindstrom. I did have a question. So we definitely have a financial mechanism here, but I get a question around procurement. So who did the procurement for these projects? Would that be the private entity that we're partnering with, or did Met Council shepherd the project from start to finish?
Mr. Chair and council members, the procurement was done by the private industry. We did not feel it was appropriate for us to tell them what they could and could not insert into their factory. That said, we did offer some, oh shoot, I'm thinking of the word. where you ask them to do their best. Shoot, it'll come to me. But we gave them some guidelines for what would be a best effort. But in the end, it was their procurement organizations that went out and procured the equipment.
Great question. Other questions?
Could I follow up with that, Chair?
Yes, please.
So have we, kind of, Mr. Smith alluded to doing their best, but what does that mean? I mean, when we talk about equity at the council, we very highly want to make sure that women, people of color are participating in these contracts. Is there a mechanism there that we can help facilitate and maybe garner some pressure on the private entity to think about things in terms of equity?
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, we encourage them to use disadvantaged businesses, DBEs and even our MCUBs, but in the end, we could not directly mandate what they could or could not do with their procurement.
Follow up on that, Councilmember Zirin, or?
No, thank you, Chair Lindstrom. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I think I got to the answer of that. Basically, you know, when we do a private versus public project like this, you know, we lose a little bit of our ability, but we are absolutely here to make sure that private industry thrives. And that's the important part that we got to remember, is that we're here to make sure the private industry wants to invest in the metro area, and that creates prosperity for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And at the same time, we are looking out for all of industry across the region, and making sure that this is a good deal for everybody as well. Other questions or points? We will be very interested to see how this proceeds over the next year, and would love another update in 9 months or a year, something along those lines. Thanks to you both. And if there's no other questions on that item, that takes us to the general manager's report.
Good evening. I have a couple things I wanted to touch base on just to give you an update on status. But first, I want to remind you that we have our second budget webinar this Thursday at 2 p.m. So if you didn't get to the first one a couple of weeks ago, I encourage you to join us for this webinar this Tuesday at 2.
We have about 35 city folks signed up roughly to attend that. So that's going to be a good crowd. And I know we had a good number of folks attend our first one as well. So these are good things to do.
That's correct. We've been really impressed by the attendance, and we've already thought that when we get back to where we can do live ones, we probably also want to offer one that's a web-based so that we can make sure we reach as many people as possible. I want to give a short update on the pandemic. So we've been doing our pandemic response since early March. What that means is that while we're delivering our essential services, we're also focused on modifying and adding our practices in the support of 3 pandemic goals. The first one being to prevent the spread of COVID in the workplace. Second, to make sure that we reduce the risks of our services being disrupted as a result of ill employees. And third, supporting employee well-being. So we've been doing really well. Our staff have been making great efforts at social distancing. So we haven't had any hot spots, and the limited illnesses we've had have not spread from one employee to another, and that's what we are hoping that we can avoid. This week we're piloting temperature checks, and we're beginning at Metro, but we plan to roll that out to the rest of our facilities. And basically anybody that wants to access our facilities, whether it's an employee or a contractor or a supplier, they're going to have a temperature taken and make sure that they are temperature free, otherwise they won't be admitted. And so far that's going well. So we are thinking that we'll be able to keep rolling that out to our facilities soon. We're also working on plans. As you've seen, the governor's slowly reopening things, and eventually we'll be able to bring some of our staff back on site. And eventually after that, we hope to have only people working remotely, not because of pandemic. But that takes a little bit of planning and work. We have employees working on site that want to make sure that we don't raise their risk by bringing back people too soon or not doing it in a way that allows for social distancing. So we're giving a lot of thought to that. We are doing virtual conversations with staff. So early on, we realized that with all the changes that we were implementing and the kinds of questions that we were fielding from staff, that you can do emails and you can do newsletters, but some of it just needs to be more interactive in real time. So we started with a couple town hall sessions for all ES staff, and they were well attended, but we had staff say, how about doing some smaller groups and hitting all the shifts so people that might be working a Saturday can be sure that they've got an opportunity during their shifts. So this last week we did 6. They were well attended, and the engagement in that smaller group was really good. I just have to share one of the bright spots. One of our staff said they had shared their experiences in our organization with the pandemic with other colleagues or friends, and how their organizations were handling it. And they said that we were by far best at handling the pandemic, and they were glad they worked for us. So that's good to hear, because we know that staff's lives have been disrupted, both at work, at home, and we're trying to make it less disruptive at work. And then lastly, I have to mention the George Floyd death. I'm happy to report that none of our facilities have sustained any damage, even though some were in the near proximity to some of that. But mostly it's captured our attention and our focus on racial justice, as with many, many others in our community. We want to be part of the change. So while we're supporting staff with the reactions and emotions that they're going through, we've also started to engage with how can we be the change in ES. We know that there's things that we can do internal to ES, but we're also part of this regional body, and we're ready and interested in looking for ways in which we can help advance racial equity within the region. So we're ready to split our attention less on pandemic and more on that as we move forward. That's my update for tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those comments. And just know that I can speak on behalf of the committee that we got your back on any sort of efforts around racial justice, and would love to brainstorm with you on a path forward. So thank you very much. If there's nothing else, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.